Hey everybody, welcome back to One Seed, One World. So today we're going to talk about 5 seeds that you can plant indoors or start indoors in the month of March. Now, one disclaimer is that this is being based off of my last frost date being around the 1st of May. So if you live farther to the north and have a later frost date, then you might want to adjust your weeks accordingly, or same thing with the south. If you live in warmer temperatures. In fact, if you live in warmer temperatures, you may have already planted all of these. All right, so let's get into it. Number 1 is tomatoes. You can plant these indoors about 6 to 8 weeks prior to your last frost date. They take about a week or 2 to germinate, depending on your conditions. You're gonna have plenty to choose from. There's over 10,000 varieties of tomatoes. They come in all shapes, colors, and sizes, everything from purple to white to orange to yellow to red to black. And then of course you've got grape tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes, and everything else in between. You know, 93% of American gardeners plant tomatoes every year in their garden. So it's kind of like the majority plant here. Now, if you don't like tomatoes, maybe you can grow them for competition. According to the Guinness World Book of Records, in 2020, Dan Sutherland from Walla Walla, Washington, grew a tomato of the Domingo variety that was 10 pounds. It's like bigger than most babies when they're born. Tomatoes are New Jersey's state vegetable, and in Arkansas, tomato, to be more specific, the South Arkansas vine-ripe pink tomato is both the state's state fruit and Arkansas's state vegetable. Tomatoes are technically a fruit because they come from a plant that produces flowers and they contain seeds, which actually applies to a lot of things in your garden, also like peppers and eggplant are technically fruits. All right, the next plant is peppers. Either sweet or hot. You'll want to start your hot peppers probably a week or 2 before you start your sweet peppers. So sweet peppers would be in the 6 to 8 week mark before your last frost date, and you'd probably want to start any of your hot varieties maybe a week or 2 even before that, so like in the 8 to 10 week mark. So some of those could even be started in February, but I normally find that starting around the beginning of March works just fine for my area. Hot peppers take a little bit longer to germinate, but in general, most of your peppers should probably germinate and sprout within a couple of weeks. Sometimes, if the temperatures aren't warm enough, hot peppers can take longer. To help that, make sure that you're putting them in an area that is warm enough, and maybe even use a heat mat to keep your soil warm. The hot peppers especially like soil temperatures to be around 80 degrees. There's over 50,000 varieties of peppers to choose from. So again, you'll have more of a problem choosing which ones you want to grow versus not having enough. I always buy a ton of peppers and different varieties because I just think that they are a cool, fun plant to grow. And they also seem to have much less problems with pests, fungus, diseases, and any of that kind of thing. Next one that you can plant 6 to 8 weeks out from your last frost date are eggplant. Again, a lot of varieties and types to choose from. Most of us think about the big purple eggplant that you see in the grocery store, but there's a lot of other varieties out there. You know, there's Thai varieties, there's Chinese varieties, there's Indian varieties, and some of them are tiny like that. Others are more long and skinny. They vary in their flavor a little bit. Some are more mild, and some are even various colors, like you can get white eggplant or like a striped lavender eggplant, which is the Antigua, which is one that I recommend. It's very pretty to grow in the garden, and the flavor's a little bit more mild if you're not into that eggplant bitter taste. Now in 5th century China, they used to make a black dye out of eggplants that the women would dye their teeth with, and it was considered a whole big fashionable thing. And then once they dyed their teeth, they would polish it, and it said that it would gleam like metal. Talk about grilling your eggplant. One last thing about eggplant is out of any other garden vegetable, they have the highest levels of nicotine. Didn't know that eggplant had nicotine in them, but they do. But don't worry, you'd have to eat probably 40 or 50 pounds of eggplant to even get a level of nicotine that was in one cigarette. It's very minor, but they do have nicotine in them, as do many other garden vegetables. All right, now going into our last two plants, we're going to talk about two herbs that you can start in March indoors. The first one might be one that doesn't readily come to mind, but it's fennel. Fennel is a multi-use herb. You can eat the bulbs, the ferns, and the seeds that are used from everything from spices down to salads, grilling them. There's lots of options that you can use fennel for, and they kind of have an anise flavor to them. So if you're into that, grow some fennel. One last thing about fennel is that Thomas Jefferson used to grow it in his gardens in Monticello, and it was a favorite of his. In fact, it was the most favorite. He said, "It greatly resembles in appearance the largest size celery, perfectly white, and there is no vegetable equals it is flavor. It is eaten at dessert, crude, and with or without dry salt. Indeed, I preferred it to every other vegetable or to any fruit." Okay, and now our last plant that you can start indoors in March is another herb. It's parsley. You got your main two types of parsley, flat leaf and curly leaf, and they're kind of used the same way. But one cool thing about parsley is that if you live in a temperate climate, it's a biennial plant. It will come back the following year, so you can get a couple harvests out of it. The first year it develops all its leaves and its main taproot so that it can store its nutrients over the winter, and then the next year it will come up again and then also produce a flowering stalk at that time. Now if you live in a subtropic or tropical area, then you would have to do it as an annual. It only works that way in the temperate climates. And one last cool thing about parsley, it's a great healthy thing. It has lots of vitamin K and other nutrients in it for you. Plus, as a dieting thing, if that's your deal, you can eat 100 grams of parsley and only get 36 calories. So there you go. All right, so that's our 5 plants that you can start indoors in March. So, tomorrow is March. So you can get started on this stuff right away. Also, if you want some suggestions for types of planting pots, mini indoor greenhouses, lighting, all that sort of thing, I'll have some links down below so that you can check that stuff out and see if any of that interests you. That's all I got for today, though. I hope whatever's going on in your neck of the woods is going fantastic for you, and that all of your seeds are starting just famously. Anyway, thanks for hanging out again with me today, and we will see you again soon. Namaste.